My sister smuggled seafood into our house after I explicitly told her my daughter has a severe shellfish allergy. Then months later she brought crab brownies to a family party and said my daughter needs to learn to navigate the world, so I went no contact. I'm a father of 3 girls. My middle daughter Tiffany, 11F, has a severe shellfish allergy. We discovered it when she was 4 after a family dinner at a seafood restaurant. She had a bite of crab cake and her throat started closing up. We spent the night in the emergency room. The doctors told us it could have been fatal if we had waited even 10 minutes longer to get her help. Since that night, we run our household with strict rules. No shellfish comes through our doors. Not ever. My wife Nina, 38F, and I have 3 daughters. Frances, 14F, Tiffany, 11F, and Bianca, 7F. We live in Portland and my younger sister Marilyn, 29F, lives in Seattle with her husband Mark, 31M. Marilyn and Mark had been trying to have a baby for 3 years. Last spring, she called us to share the news that she was finally pregnant. We were all happy for them. Marilyn and Mark had always been good with our girls. They visited us twice a year and the kids loved having their aunt and uncle around. Marilyn would bring gifts and play board games with them for hours. Mark taught Frances how to play guitar. They seemed like the type of people who would make good parents. When Marilyn hit 7 months, she started planning a baby shower. She wanted to have it in Portland because most of her friends and our family lived here. She asked if she and Mark could stay with us for the weekend of the shower. We said yes. We had a guest room and it made sense. The shower was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at a rented event space. Marilyn would arrive on Thursday evening and leave Sunday morning. Before they came, Nina called Marilyn to go over the house rules. She explained again about Tiffany's allergy. Marilyn had known about it for years but Nina wanted to be clear since they would be staying for 3 days. Marilyn said she understood completely. She promised they wouldn't bring any shellfish products into the house. Thursday evening came and Marilyn and Mark arrived with their bags. The girls ran to greet them. Bianca jumped into Mark's arms. Frances showed Marilyn her new painting. Tiffany hung back a bit but smiled when Marilyn complimented her shirt. We ordered pizza for dinner and sat around the table talking about the baby. Marilyn was having a boy. She had already picked out the name, James. Friday went smoothly. Nina took Marilyn out for lunch while Mark stayed home and watched a movie with the girls. That evening, Marilyn said she wanted to go grocery shopping. She said she had specific cravings and wanted to pick up some snacks for herself. Nina offered to go with her but Marilyn said she wanted to browse alone. She took Mark's car and left around 6. She came back an hour later with 4 grocery bags. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she walked in. I helped her carry the bags to the counter. She started unpacking and I saw containers of shrimp cocktail, crab dip, lobster rolls from a deli counter, and cans of clam chowder. There was also a package of raw shrimp and oyster crackers. I put down the bag I was holding. I asked her what she was doing. She looked at me and said these were for her. She said she had been craving seafood for weeks and her doctor told her it was fine to eat it during pregnancy. She said she would be careful and keep everything sealed. She said she would only eat it when Tiffany wasn't around. I told her she couldn't keep any of it in our house. I reminded her about Tiffany's allergy. I explained that even cross-contamination could send Tiffany to the hospital. Marilyn's face changed. She said I was being unreasonable. She said she was pregnant and needed to eat what her body was telling her to eat. She said she promised to be careful and that should be enough. She said she wasn't going to eat it around Tiffany and she would wash her hands. Nina walked into the kitchen and saw the seafood spread across the counter. She asked what was happening. I explained. Nina's jaw tightened. She told Marilyn the same thing I did. Marilyn started talking faster. She said we were treating her like a child. She said she had driven all the way here and was doing us a favor by having her shower in Portland. She said the least we could do was trust her to manage some shrimp. Mark came into the kitchen then. He asked what was wrong. Marilyn turned to him and said we were refusing to let her eat what she needed. Mark looked at the counter and then at us. He said Marilyn had been talking about seafood for days. He said maybe we could figure out a compromise. He suggested she could keep it in a separate cooler in their room. Nina said no. She said it wasn't about trust. She said it was about our daughter's life. Marilyn's eyes filled with tears. She said she had never felt so unwelcome. She said family should accommodate each other. She picked up one of the containers and said she would just keep it in the guest room then. Nina stepped between her and the hallway. She said if Marilyn wanted to stay here, the seafood had to leave. The kitchen went quiet. Marilyn stared at Nina. Mark shifted his weight and looked at the floor. Marilyn finally put the container down. She said fine. She said she would take it all back to the store in the morning. She grabbed one bag and walked out of the kitchen. Mark gathered the rest and followed her. We heard the guest room door close. Nina and I looked at each other. I asked if she thought Marilyn would actually return it. Nina said she didn't know. We decided to check on the girls. They were in the living room watching TV and hadn't heard anything. We didn't mention the argument. Saturday morning arrived. I woke up early to make breakfast. Nina was still sleeping. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator to get eggs. The seafood was still there. All of it. The shrimp cocktail was on the second shelf next to our milk. The crab dip was in the door. The deli container with lobster rolls sat on the bottom shelf right next to a container of strawberries Tiffany loved to eat for breakfast. The raw shrimp package was opened and sitting on a plate. Some of the shrimp were missing. I closed the refrigerator. I stood there for a minute. Then I opened it again to make sure I had seen correctly. The seafood was definitely there. I grabbed a trash bag from under the sink. I started pulling everything out of the refrigerator. Not just the seafood. Everything. The milk, the juice, the leftovers, the fruit, the cheese. All of it went into the bag. I wasn't sure what had been contaminated and I wasn't taking chances. Marilyn came downstairs while I was doing this. She was wearing pajamas and her hair was in a messy bun. She saw me with the trash bag and asked what I was doing. I didn't answer right away. I kept pulling items out of the refrigerator. She walked closer and saw the seafood containers in the trash bag. She said my name louder. She asked why I was throwing away her food. I tied the bag and turned to her. I told her she had lied. I told her she had put my daughter in danger. I told her the raw shrimp package had been opened, which meant she had been handling it in our kitchen. Marilyn said she had only eaten a few pieces last night after everyone went to bed. She said she had washed her hands thoroughly. She said she didn't touch anything else in the kitchen. I picked up the trash bag. I told her she needed to leave. Marilyn said I was overreacting. She said nothing had happened and Tiffany was fine. She said I was being dramatic and ruining her shower weekend. I walked toward the front door with the bag. Marilyn followed me. She raised her voice. She said I couldn't kick her out. She said the shower was in a few hours and she needed to get ready here. She said she was pregnant and stressed and I was making everything worse. Mark came down the stairs. He asked what was going on. Marilyn turned to him and said I was kicking them out because she ate some shrimp. Mark looked confused. He asked me what happened. I told him. He looked at Marilyn. He asked if she had really kept the seafood after we said no. Marilyn said yes, but it wasn't a big deal. Mark rubbed his face with his hands. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he told Marilyn to go pack their things. Marilyn started crying. She said she couldn't believe this was happening. She said we were supposed to be family. She said I was choosing to humiliate her on one of the most important days of her life. Mark put his hand on her shoulder and guided her back upstairs. I took the trash bag out to my car. I planned to drive it to a donation center that accepted food items. Nina came downstairs 20 minutes later. She saw the empty refrigerator. I explained what happened. She sat down at the kitchen table. She asked where Marilyn and Mark were. I told her they were packing. She nodded. The girls started waking up and coming downstairs. Frances asked why the refrigerator was empty. Nina told her we had to throw some things away and we would go shopping later. Mark and Marilyn came downstairs with their bags 30 minutes later. Marilyn's face was red and puffy. Mark carried both bags. He apologized to us. He said they would find a hotel. Marilyn walked past us without speaking and went out the front door. Mark followed her. Their car pulled out of our driveway. The baby shower still happened that afternoon. Nina and I didn't go. We told the girls we needed to stay home and clean. Frances asked why Aunt Marilyn and Uncle Mark had left so early. Nina told her there had been a disagreement and they decided to stay somewhere else. Frances didn't push further. My mother called me that evening. She had been at the shower. She said Marilyn told everyone we had kicked her out over a misunderstanding. She said Marilyn was very upset and several people had asked her what happened. My mother wanted to know the full story. I told her. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she understood why we did it. She said she would talk to Marilyn. Nina spent the next 3 hours scrubbing the kitchen. She wiped down every surface, cleaned out the refrigerator with bleach solution, and washed all the dishes even though they had been in closed cabinets. I went grocery shopping and replaced everything I had thrown away. Tiffany asked why Mom was cleaning so much. I told her we were just doing a deep clean. Update 1: Marilyn sent me a text 2 weeks after the shower. She said she wanted to talk. She said she had thought about what happened and she realized she had made a mistake. She said her pregnancy hormones had made her act irrationally. She said she was sorry for bringing the seafood into our house after we specifically said not to. She said she hoped we could move past it. I showed the text to Nina. She said it was up to me whether to respond. I thought about it for a day. Then I replied that I appreciated her apology. I said we could talk on the phone if she wanted. She called me that evening. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes. Marilyn apologized again. She explained that she had been having intense cravings and wasn't thinking clearly. She said she understood now how dangerous her actions were. She said Mark had explained to her how serious Tiffany's allergy was and that she could have caused a medical emergency. She sounded genuine. I accepted her apology. I told her we could work on rebuilding trust. She asked if she could come visit in a month after the baby was born. She said she wanted the girls to meet their new cousin. I said we would see. I told her we needed some more time. She said she understood. Mark also sent me an email. He apologized for not being more firm with Marilyn. He said he should have made her return the seafood immediately. He said he felt terrible about what happened. He said he hoped we could still be family. My mother called me after she heard Marilyn and I had talked. She said she was glad we were working things out. She said Marilyn was having a hard time with the pregnancy and was very emotional. She said families should forgive each other. I told her we were taking it slow. James was born 3 weeks after our phone call. Marilyn sent photos. He was small with dark hair. Nina and I sent a gift card and a card congratulating them. Marilyn texted back, thanking us and asking again about visiting. I told her maybe in another month or 2. 4 weeks after James was born, my mother called with an invitation. She was hosting a family dinner at her house for Marilyn and Mark to introduce James to everyone. She wanted us to come. She said it would be a good opportunity for everyone to spend time together. The dinner was planned for a Saturday afternoon. She said about 15 people would be there, including my other sister Jessica, 35F, and her 2 kids. Nina said she wasn't comfortable going yet. She said she wasn't ready to spend several hours at a family gathering with Marilyn. I understood, but I also thought about Tiffany and my other daughters. They had been asking about the baby and when they could meet him. Frances had even drawn a welcome picture for her new cousin. I talked to Nina more about it. She finally agreed we could go, but she wanted to leave early if things felt uncomfortable. I told my mother we would come. She sounded relieved. The dinner was scheduled for 1 in the afternoon. We drove to my mother's house and arrived right on time. Jessica was already there with her kids. They were playing in the backyard. My mother greeted us at the door and hugged the girls. She led us to the living room where Marilyn and Mark were sitting on the couch. James was asleep in a carrier next to them. Marilyn stood up when she saw us. She smiled and said she was glad we came. Mark shook my hand. The girls gathered around the baby carrier to look at James. Bianca asked if she could hold him. Marilyn said maybe later when he woke up. Everything seemed normal. My mother served lunch on her back patio. She had made sandwiches and salads. We sat at a long table and ate while the kids ran around the yard. Marilyn sat next to my mother. Nina and I sat at the other end with Jessica and her husband. The conversation was light. People talked about work and summer vacation plans. After lunch, my mother brought out dessert. She had made a chocolate cake to celebrate James's arrival. She brought it out on a platter and set it in the center of the table. Then she went back inside and returned with a tray of other desserts. Cookies, brownies, and some kind of tarts. She set the tray down and started serving slices of cake. Tiffany asked what kind of tarts they were. My mother said they were fruit tarts. Tiffany reached for one. I happened to look at the tray at that moment. There were crumbs around one of the brownies that looked odd. They were reddish. I looked closer. There were small pieces of what looked like crab mixed into the brownie. I stood up quickly. I told Tiffany not to eat anything yet. Everyone stopped talking and looked at me. My mother asked what was wrong. I pointed at the brownies. I asked what was in them. My mother looked confused. She said they were chocolate brownies. I asked if there was seafood in any of the desserts. The table went silent. Marilyn shifted in her seat. My mother looked at Marilyn. Marilyn didn't say anything at first. Then she said my mother had asked her to bring some desserts and she had made a few things. My mother said she didn't know what was in them. She said Marilyn had just handed her the tray when she arrived and said they were assorted desserts. I looked at Marilyn. I asked her directly if there was seafood in any of the desserts on that tray. Marilyn said yes. She said she had made crab brownies because she saw a recipe online and wanted to try it. She said she had clearly labeled them with a small card that said crab brownies. I looked at the tray. There was no card. Nina stood up. She asked Marilyn if she was serious. Marilyn said she didn't think it would be a problem because the desserts were clearly separated and she assumed people would ask before eating. She said the crab brownies were on one side of the tray and the regular cookies were on the other side. She said she thought adults could figure out which was which. I asked her why she would bring food containing shellfish to a family gathering where she knew my daughter would be present. Marilyn said she didn't make them for Tiffany. She said she made them for the adults who wanted to try something different. She said she wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Nina picked up the tray and took it into the house. I heard the garbage disposal running. Marilyn called after her. She said those took her hours to make. Nina came back outside and said we were leaving. Frances and Bianca looked confused. Tiffany asked what was happening. Nina told the girls to get in the car. My mother tried to calm everyone down. She said this was a misunderstanding. She said Marilyn didn't mean any harm. Jessica stood up and said she agreed with us. She said bringing shellfish to a family gathering when everyone knew about Tiffany's allergy was unacceptable. Her husband nodded. Marilyn started crying. She said everyone was ganging up on her. She said she was just trying to contribute to the party. She said she was tired of walking on eggshells around my family. Mark told her to stop talking. She said no. She said she was sick of pretending like Tiffany's allergy had to dictate every single family gathering. She said other people should be able to eat what they want. I picked up Bianca because she started crying. Frances grabbed Tiffany's hand. Nina was already walking toward the front door. Jessica gathered her kids. My mother stood between us and Marilyn. She said we should all sit down and talk. I said there was nothing to talk about. I told Marilyn that she was not welcome around my family anymore. She said I was overreacting again just like last time. She said I always made everything about Tiffany's allergy and it was exhausting. We left. Jessica and her family left right after us. My mother called me an hour later. She said she had no idea Marilyn was bringing seafood. She said Marilyn had told her she made special desserts and asked her not to look in the container because it was a surprise. My mother said she should have checked. She apologized. Update 2: Marilyn showed up at our house on a Tuesday afternoon. Nina was at work. I was working from home. The girls were at school. I heard the doorbell and saw through the window that it was Marilyn. She was holding James in a carrier. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She said she wanted to talk face to face. She said texting and calling wasn't working. She said she needed me to understand her perspective. I told her I understood it fine and that she should leave. She said she wasn't leaving until I listened to her. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. I told her to say what she needed to say. She adjusted James's carrier and said she never meant to hurt Tiffany. She said she made a bad decision at the shower weekend, but the dessert situation was different. She said she had a right to make food she enjoyed and bring it to gatherings. She said my mother's house wasn't my house and I didn't get to control what food was served there. I told her she was right that it wasn't my house but it was a family gathering where my daughter was present. I told her that bringing shellfish to any event where Tiffany would be was unacceptable. Marilyn said I was being controlling. She said Tiffany needed to learn to navigate a world where other people ate shellfish and I couldn't protect her forever. I told her she needed to leave my property. She said I was being unfair. She said she had apologized multiple times and I wasn't willing to move forward. She said she was trying to be a good sister and a good aunt but I was making it impossible. She started crying again. She said this was ruining her relationship with our whole family. I went back inside and closed the door. She rang the doorbell 3 more times. I didn't answer. She finally left. She sent me a text an hour later. It said she tried to make things right but I wasn't willing to meet her halfway. It said she hoped I would regret pushing family away. It said she would pray that nothing ever happened to Tiffany that I could have prevented if I wasn't so paranoid. I showed Nina the text when she got home. She read it twice. She said we needed to block Marilyn's number. I agreed. We blocked her on our phones. We also blocked Mark because he had been sending messages asking us to give Marilyn another chance. My mother called me 2 days later. She said Marilyn had been at her house crying. She said Marilyn felt like she was losing her whole family over mistakes she had made. My mother said she thought we should consider forgiving her. I told my mother that forgiveness didn't mean allowing someone back into our lives who had repeatedly put our daughter in danger. My mother said she understood but asked if we could at least stay in contact for the sake of the kids knowing their cousin. I told her no. I told her that Marilyn had shown us who she was twice now and I believed her. My mother said she respected my decision but it made her sad. She said she wouldn't push me anymore. She said she would still have a relationship with Marilyn and Mark but she understood if that made things complicated for us. Jessica called me the next week. She said she was fully on our side. She said she couldn't believe Marilyn had brought shellfish desserts to a family party. She said she thought Marilyn was doing it on purpose. She said the first time could have been pregnancy hormones but the second time was deliberate. Jessica said she wasn't going to family events if Marilyn was there. The girls asked about Marilyn a few times. Frances asked if we would ever see baby James again. I told her probably not. She asked why. I explained that sometimes adults have disagreements that can't be fixed. She said it seemed sad. I agreed that it was sad. Tiffany asked if Marilyn was mad at her because of her allergy. I told her absolutely not. I told her that her allergy was a medical condition and anyone who had a problem with it was wrong. Mark sent me an email 3 weeks later. He didn't come to us through my mother this time. He sent it directly. The email was long. He said he had tried to stay neutral but he couldn't anymore. He said Marilyn had been struggling with postpartum hormones and grief over losing contact with our family. He said I was punishing her too harshly for honest mistakes. He said she never intended to hurt Tiffany and wouldn't have made those desserts if she thought Tiffany would actually eat them. He said Marilyn had labeled the brownies with a card but it must have fallen off in the car. He said my mother never told her there would be a dessert table so Marilyn thought her items would be served separately. He said I had misunderstood the situation and turned it into something bigger than it was. He said I had isolated Marilyn from her family during a vulnerable time in her life. He said our children were cousins and should grow up knowing each other. He asked me to reconsider for the sake of family unity. I didn't respond to the email. Nina said that response would just create more back and forth. She said we had made our decision and we should stick to it. Update 3: Marilyn sent me a letter in the mail. It arrived at our house on a Saturday. My name was handwritten on the envelope. Inside was a 3-page letter written in blue ink. The first page was about how much she missed us. The second page was about how hard it was being a new mother without family support. The third page said she was willing to compromise. She said she would never bring shellfish to any gathering if we were there. She said she would even avoid eating shellfish for 24 hours before seeing us so there was no chance of contamination. She said she just wanted to be part of our lives again. At the bottom of the third page, she wrote that she had been talking to her doctor about Tiffany's allergy. She said her doctor told her that most people with shellfish allergies could be in the same room as shellfish without having a reaction. She said the danger was mainly from eating it or touching it and then touching your face. She said she had been doing research and thought maybe we were being more cautious than necessary. I put the letter down. Nina, read it after me. She said the fact that Marilyn was now questioning the severity of Tiffany's allergy told her everything she needed to know. She said we had made the right decision to cut contact. I didn't respond to the letter. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. This one was shorter. It said Marilyn was disappointed I hadn't responded. It said she had reached out multiple times and tried everything she could think of to repair our relationship. It said if I didn't respond, she would have to assume I wanted nothing to do with her. It said that would break her heart, but she would respect my wishes. It said she hoped someday I would realize family was more important than holding grudges. I still didn't respond. Nina and I talked about whether we should send one final message making it clear we weren't interested in contact. We decided against it. We agreed that any response would just give Marilyn an opening to continue trying. My mother called me a month later. She said Marilyn had stopped talking to her about us. She said Marilyn seemed to have accepted that we weren't going to reconcile. My mother asked how the girls were doing. I said they were fine. Francis had stopped asking about baby James. Tiffany was having a good year at school. Bianca had started taking piano lessons. Jessica and I got closer during this time. She started coming over for dinner twice a month. Her kids and my kids got along well. She said she didn't miss the family gatherings with Marilyn there. She said she always felt like she had to monitor everything when Marilyn was around. She said it was exhausting. My mother still saw Marilyn and Mark and sent me occasional updates without me asking. She said James was getting big and starting to smile. She said Marilyn and Mark seemed to be doing well. She said Marilyn had joined a mom group and was making new friends. She said she thought Marilyn was moving on with her life. I was fine with that. Nina was fine with that. The girls adjusted to not having Marilyn and Mark in their lives. We had other family and friends who filled that space. We hosted a birthday party for Tiffany's 12th birthday and she had a great time. Frances started high school and joined the art club. Bianca learned to ride a bike without training wheels. Things were different, but they were stable. We had drawn a clear line and stuck to it. That was more important than maintaining a relationship with someone who couldn't respect basic safety rules. Marilyn was my sister, but she wasn't more important than my daughter's life. That was the only thing that mattered. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My twin brother showed up drunk at our dad's house after I exposed his lifelong obsession with copying everything about me. My twin brother Marcus, 31M, and I, 31F, have always had a complicated relationship right from our childhood. Even though we're not identical twins, we were always together growing up and used to be extremely close. As kids, we did practically everything together, shared the same friend groups and generally just enjoyed each other's company. But somewhere around middle school, things started changing between us. What began as normal sibling closeness slowly morphed into something really disturbing. Marcus started copying literally everything about me, from the way I dressed to the hobbies I picked up, and even the academic subjects I showed interest in. At first, I thought it was kind of cute, you know? Like he admired his big sister. I'm older by 12 minutes and never let him forget it, and wanted to be like me. But then it started getting weird and uncomfortable because he went from wanting to dress like me and pick up the same hobbies to actively trying to infiltrate my friend groups and going after the same people I was interested in romantically. By high school, it had gotten completely out of hand. He would sign up for the same classes as me, join any club I became part of, and even try to befriend my friends behind my back. I started to feel like I couldn't have anything that was just mine. I couldn't develop my own identity because he was constantly there, copying everything and trying to be exactly like me. It was suffocating and honestly really creepy. The breaking point came during our senior year of high school. I had been dating this guy named Chris for a few months, and we were planning to go to prom together. I was really excited about it because Chris was someone I genuinely liked, and for once, it seemed like I had something in my life that Marcus couldn't copy or insert himself into. But I was wrong. A week before prom, Chris suddenly became really distant and eventually told me he couldn't go with me anymore. I was confused and hurt until one of my friends told me that Marcus had been spreading rumors about me to Chris, saying that I was cheating on him and that I had been talking badly about him behind his back. I was absolutely furious when I found out. I confronted Marcus as soon as I got home that day, and we had this massive argument where I finally called him out on all his creepy behavior over the years. I told him he needed to stop trying to copy my entire life and sabotaging the things that were important to me just because he couldn't have them. Instead of apologizing or even acknowledging what he'd done, he completely flipped the script and accused me of being threatened by him. He said I was just insecure because he was better at everything than me and that I couldn't stand the competition. Then he brought our parents into it, claiming they had always favored me over him and that's why I thought I was so special. This was completely untrue. Our parents had always been extremely careful to treat us equally. In fact, if anything, they sometimes gave Marcus more attention because he was always so competitive and seemed to need more validation. But in his mind, he had built up this whole narrative where I was the favored child and he was the victim who had to struggle for recognition. That fight completely changed our relationship. After that, we barely spoke to each other throughout college. I went to a university on the East Coast, and he went to one on the West Coast, so the distance made it easy to avoid each other. For years, we only saw each other at major family holidays, and even then, we kept our interactions to a minimum. It was sad, especially for our parents who didn't fully understand what had happened between us, but I was actually relieved to finally be developing my own identity without feeling like I was being copied all the time. 3 years ago, our mom passed away suddenly from a heart attack. It was devastating for all of us, and it temporarily brought the family together. For our dad's sake, Marcus and I made an effort to be civil to each other at family gatherings. We weren't exactly friends, but we weren't openly hostile either. There was always this underlying tension though, like we were both just waiting for the other to say or do something that would trigger another fight. During this time, I met and fell in love with Nathan. We got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony. Because of COVID restrictions, we kept it small, but it was still beautiful and exactly what we wanted. Marcus attended the wedding with a date, but I could tell he was uncomfortable the whole time. He kept making these little comments about how rushed our relationship was and questioning if we really knew each other well enough to get married. I ignored him because I didn't want drama at my wedding, but it was clear that he was still harboring these negative feelings toward me. Shortly after our wedding, I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition that caused significant weight loss and a host of other health complications. It was a really difficult time, but Nathan was my rock through it all. He took care of me, came to all my doctor's appointments, and never once made me feel like I was a burden, even when I was at my worst. A few weeks ago, my condition started improving significantly. The treatments were finally working, and I was starting to feel like myself again. Nathan was so happy about my progress that he decided to organize a small celebration party. He invited our closest friends and family, including Marcus. I was hesitant about Marcus coming, but Nathan insisted that he should be there since he was family, and I agreed because I didn't want to cause any drama. That was a mistake. Throughout the entire party, Marcus kept making these uncomfortable comments about my appearance, particularly my weight loss. He kept saying things like I looked like a skeleton and asked if I was deliberately starving myself for attention. He even suggested to some of our relatives that my illness might be psychosomatic, implying that I was making myself sick to get sympathy. I tried to ignore him as much as possible because I knew engaging would only make things worse, but his comments were making everyone uncomfortable, and it was putting a damper on what was supposed to be a happy occasion. After the party, Marcus's girlfriend Vanessa approached me privately. She apologized for his behavior and said she had never seen this side of him before. They had been dating for about 6 months, and this was only the second or third time she had been around our family. I was surprised by her apology, but I appreciated it. I casually mentioned that this kind of jealous behavior was pretty typical for Marcus when it came to me, but that I was used to it by now. It was just a casual comment on my part, but apparently, it led to a huge fight between them later that night. Marcus called me the next day, absolutely furious. He accused me of deliberately trying to sabotage his relationship with Vanessa and claimed that I had spent hours telling her horrible things about him, which wasn't true at all. I tried to explain that I had only made one brief comment and that I actually appreciated Vanessa's maturity in apologizing for his behavior, but he wouldn't listen. Since then, he's been contacting various family members and mutual friends, trying to turn them against me. He's claiming that I'm jealous of his happiness with Vanessa and that I'm deliberately trying to ruin his life because I can't stand to see him happy. It's absurd, especially considering that I'm the one who's been struggling with a serious health condition while he's been perfectly healthy. I spoke to my dad about the situation, even though I usually try to keep him out of our conflicts. He told me that Marcus has been expressing a lot of jealousy about my marriage. Apparently, Marcus has been complaining to him that it's unfair that I found someone who loves me enough to stick by me through a serious illness, while he struggled to maintain relationships. He seems to see my marriage as yet another thing I have that he doesn't, rather than understanding that relationships aren't competitions or possessions. Nathan thinks I should finally stand up for myself and tell everyone the truth about Marcus's behavior over the years. He says that I've been letting Marcus get away with too much for too long, and that's why he feels entitled to keep behaving this way. Part of me agrees with him, but I'm also worried about the impact more drama could have on my recovery. I'm still not at 100% health-wise, and stress can trigger flare-ups of my condition. On top of that, I don't want to drag my dad into more family conflict. He's still grieving the loss of my mom, and I know it breaks his heart to see his children at odds with each other. But at the same time, I can't just let Marcus continue to spread lies about me and try to turn our family against me. I'm kind of in a dilemma right now. AITA for wanting to finally expose my brother's obsessive behavior and set the record straight with our family? Update 1. It's been about 2 weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened in that time. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments and messages. Reading them really helped me realize that I wasn't overreacting to the situation and that it was time I finally stood up for myself. After talking it over with Nathan and a few close friends, and even discussing it with my dad, I decided that I couldn't just keep quiet anymore. For years, I've been trying to take the high road by ignoring Marcus's behavior, hoping that eventually he would grow up and stop this unhealthy competition. But all that did was enable him to continue, and now it had reached a point where he was actively trying to damage my relationships with other people. So, I decided to make a detailed social media post explaining the history between Marcus and me. I didn't use any inflammatory language or make any accusations that I couldn't back up with facts. I simply laid out the pattern of behavior that had been going on since we were teenagers, his constant need to copy everything about me, the sabotage of my relationship in high school, and his recent behavior at my recovery celebration. I explained how he was now trying to make me out to be the villain by claiming I was trying to ruin his relationship with Vanessa, when in reality, all I had done was acknowledge his behavior to her after she approached me. The response was overwhelming. So many family members, mutual friends, and even a couple of Marcus's ex-girlfriends commented on the post, confirming that they had witnessed his unhealthy fixation on my life. Some of our cousins shared stories of how Marcus would constantly talk about me at family gatherings, alternating between criticizing me and trying to one-up me. One of his exes even revealed that a major reason for their breakup was his constant comparisons between her and me, and his obsession with competing with me in every aspect of life. Several people mentioned that they had always sensed something off about our dynamic but hadn't realized the extent of it until I laid it all out. Many apologized for not speaking up sooner or for sometimes buying into Marcus's version of events. It was validating to know that I wasn't crazy or imagining things, but also sad to realize how many people had noticed his behavior but didn't say anything. The most surprising responses came from a couple of his former close friends who confirmed that Marcus would talk about me constantly, in what they described as an unhealthy and obsessive way. One friend mentioned that Marcus would often go through my social media accounts looking for things to criticize or copy. Another said that Marcus would get visibly angry whenever someone complimented me or my accomplishments came up in conversation. Of course, Marcus didn't take this well. He made his own post claiming that he was the victim of family favoritism and that everyone was taking my side because I was the golden child. He portrayed himself as the underdog who had always lived in his twin sister's shadow, twisting the narrative to make himself appear sympathetic. He even brought up instances from our childhood where he claimed our parents had favored me, though the examples he gave were either completely fabricated or grossly misrepresented. But with so many people corroborating my side of the story, his claims fell flat. Even our extended family members who had initially been neutral started reaching out to me privately to express their support. Many of them admitted that they had always sensed something was off about Marcus's attitude toward me but hadn't realized how deep it went. In my post, I made it clear that I wasn't asking anyone to cut Marcus off or take sides. I just wanted to defend myself against his accusations and explain why our relationship was so strained. But despite this, many family members have naturally distanced themselves from Marcus after seeing his manipulative behavior fully exposed. His response to being called out, doubling down, playing the victim, and refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing, only reinforced the picture I had painted of him. Vanessa reached out to me privately to thank me for my honesty. She said that after our conversation at the party, she had started noticing patterns in Marcus's behavior that concerned her, and my post had confirmed her suspicions. She didn't say whether they were still together, but I got the impression that their relationship was on thin ice. As for me, I've decided not to engage any further with Marcus or respond to any of his counter-accusations. I've said what needed to be said, and continuing the public back and forth would only create more drama. My focus now is on my health and the positive relationships in my life. I'm still recovering from my autoimmune condition, and stress is the last thing I need right now. Nathan has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this. He says he's proud of me for finally standing up for myself after years of letting Marcus's behavior slide. My dad is in a difficult position, torn between his two children, but he told me that he understood why I felt the need to speak out and that he hoped this might eventually lead to some kind of resolution between Marcus and me, though we both know that's probably wishful thinking at this point. For now, I'm taking a step back from the whole situation. I've blocked Marcus on all my social media platforms and asked mutual friends not to relay messages from him to me. I need space to heal, both physically from my illness and emotionally from this lifelong dynamic with my twin. Maybe someday we can have a civil relationship again, but that would require Marcus to acknowledge his behavior and make real changes, which honestly seems unlikely based on his reaction so far. Update 2. It's been about 3 weeks since my last update, and the situation with Marcus has evolved in ways I didn't expect. After I made my post, pretty much everyone in our extended family stopped speaking to him. We've blocked each other on social media, but mutual friends and relatives have told me that he's been continuously posting bitter things about me, criticizing my appearance, my marriage, and even suggesting that I'm exaggerating my illness for attention. I've asked people to stop sending me screenshots of his posts because I genuinely don't want to know what he's saying anymore. I'm focused on my recovery and my own life, and constantly being updated about his latest attacks is just unnecessary stress. The biggest development is that Vanessa has ended their relationship. Nathan follows her on Instagram and saw her post announcing that she and Marcus had decided to part ways. She requested privacy and didn't go into details about the reasons for the breakup, but given the timing, it's not hard to guess that our family drama played a role in her decision. When I first heard about this, I felt a pang of guilt. I know Marcus was serious about Vanessa, and despite our issues, I don't take pleasure in seeing him hurt. But then I reminded myself that this was a consequence of his own actions, not mine. If he hadn't behaved so inappropriately at my party and then tried to blame me for Vanessa's reaction, none of this would have happened. This morning, I got a disturbing call from my dad. He told me that last night, Marcus showed up at his house completely drunk. Despite the fact that my dad hasn't been speaking much to Marcus lately, he made it clear that he wouldn't engage with him until Marcus apologized to me for his behavior. He couldn't just leave his son outside in the cold. According to my dad, Marcus was underdressed for the weather and seemed to have walked a considerable distance to get there, which was concerning given how intoxicated he was. Once inside, Marcus apparently had a complete breakdown. He started crying and accusing everyone in the family of abandoning him and siding with me. He kept saying that no one ever loved him and that everyone always preferred me over him. My dad tried to comfort him, explaining that this wasn't about taking sides but about Marcus's behavior and his refusal to acknowledge how his actions affect others. But Marcus was too drunk and emotional to have a rational conversation. He eventually passed out on my dad's couch, but when my dad woke up in the morning, Marcus was already gone. My dad has tried calling and texting him to make sure he's okay, but Marcus hasn't responded. This incident has left me feeling conflicted. On one hand, I'm worried about Marcus's well-being. Showing up drunk at our dad's house, walking in the cold without proper clothing, and having an emotional breakdown aren't signs of someone who's in a good place mentally. On the other hand, I can't help but feel like this is just another manifestation of the same pattern, Marcus making everything about him and playing the victim when faced with the consequences of his own actions. I still don't understand why he's always viewed our relationship as a competition. I never wanted to compete with him. I just wanted to live my own life and have my own identity, separate from being a twin. It's frustrating and sad that he couldn't see that, and instead interpreted my desire for independence as some kind of threat or rejection of him. My dad is worried about Marcus and feels torn between us. He loves us both and hates seeing us at odds, especially now that we're adults. I know it's hard for him, especially since Mom died. She was always better at mediating between us and helping us see each other's perspectives. Without her, the fractures in our relationship have only deepened. As for me, I'm continuing to focus on my health. My doctors are pleased with my progress, and I'm gradually regaining the weight I lost due to my condition. Nathan continues to be my biggest supporter, and I'm grateful every day for his patience and love throughout this ordeal. I still have no desire to engage directly with Marcus, but I am genuinely concerned about his mental state. I've asked my dad to let me know if Marcus contacts him again or if he has any reason to believe Marcus might harm himself. In the meantime, I'm trying to put this whole situation behind me and focus on the positive aspects of my life. I've picked up some old hobbies that I had to set aside while I was at my sickest, and it feels good to be active and creative again. I'm also spending more quality time with friends who have been supportive throughout all of this. Life is too short to be consumed by negativity and drama, especially when you've faced a serious health crisis that puts everything in perspective. Update 3, it's been a little over a week since my last update, and I'm still processing what happened yesterday morning. I was getting ready to start my workday, I work from home, when I heard shouting outside my house. I immediately recognized Marcus's voice, and my first thought was that I needed to get him to quiet down before the neighbors got involved. I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, and the last thing I wanted was to create a scene that would make everyone uncomfortable. I opened the door and told Marcus to lower his voice, saying that whatever he wanted to say to me, he could say without disturbing the entire street. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. My first thought was that he was here to confront me about Vanessa leaving him or to blame me for the family cutting him off. I was already mentally preparing for an argument. But to my complete surprise, Marcus told me he wasn't here to fight. He said he came to apologize. I was so taken aback that I just stood there silently while he continued talking. He admitted that he had always been jealous of me, even though there was no real reason for it. He said that from a young age, he had convinced himself that I was somehow getting preferential treatment or that people naturally liked me more than him, even though deep down he knew that wasn't true. He acknowledged that his behavior at my recovery party was inexcusable and that he deserved the fallout that came afterward. Losing Vanessa had been a wake-up call for him. She had apparently told him in no uncertain terms that his obsession with competing against me was unhealthy and that she couldn't be with someone who was so consumed by jealousy and resentment. He realized that his issues had cost him not just his relationship with Vanessa, but with most of our family as well. Marcus admitted that he still has complicated feelings about our relationship and that he struggles with feelings of inadequacy when comparing himself to me. But he also recognized that these feelings were his problem to deal with, not mine, and that his behavior had been self-destructive and hurtful. The most surprising part was when he told me he had scheduled his first therapy appointment for next week. He said he knew he needed professional help to work through these issues that had dominated so much of his life. He wasn't expecting me to forgive him right away or for us to suddenly have a close relationship again, but he wanted me to know that he was genuinely sorry and was taking steps to change. After he left, I called Nathan and then my dad to tell them what had happened. My dad confirmed that Marcus had visited him as well to apologize for his drunken behavior and for putting him in the middle of our conflict for so many years. My dad was cautiously optimistic about Marcus's apparent change of heart but warned me not to get my hopes up too high too quickly. In the days since then, I've heard from several family members that Marcus has reached out to them as well, acknowledging his behavior and asking for a chance to rebuild their trust. Many of them contacted me first to check if I was okay with them reconnecting with Marcus, which I appreciated. I told them all the same thing, that while Marcus and I have agreed to maintain our distance from each other for now, I don't expect or want others to cut him out of their lives on my behalf. If he's genuinely trying to change and make amends, he deserves the chance to do so. As for me, I'm continuing to focus on my recovery, which has been progressing well. My doctors are pleased with my improvements, and I'm gradually returning to my normal activities, though I still have to be careful not to overexert myself. Nathan has been incredible throughout this entire ordeal, and this experience has made me even more appreciative of the genuine, supportive relationships in my life. I don't know if Marcus will stick with therapy or if he'll truly be able to overcome the issues that have plagued him for so long. I don't expect us to ever have the kind of close twin relationship that some siblings enjoy. Too much has happened between us, and some bridges, once burned, can't be fully rebuilt. But I do hope that he finds the peace and self-acceptance that he's been lacking, and that eventually, we can at least have a cordial relationship as adult siblings who respect each other's boundaries. In the meantime, I'm embracing this period of relative calm and focusing on the future. My health continues to improve, my marriage is stronger than ever, and for the first time in a long while, I feel like I can move forward without constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next conflict with Marcus will erupt. Whether this peace lasts or not, I'm determined to make the most of it and continue prioritizing my well-being and happiness.